Once Upon a Line is a game that feels like no other. It's extremely innovative, very unique, and it is an experience that it will be remembered for days to come. I really enjoyed this game, so let me present to you this preview video about this game coming from Lucky Duck Games in English and Peter and Francas in French, about a new game, a new cooperative, narrative and fully immersive game that uses a very unique system. You have a scratch-off system. You have the Grid of Destiny, which you scratch off areas according to the rules of the game, which reflect and reveal words underneath it that are clues for you to go and read specific story cards, that they will guide you in the different directions, make you take choices, and then look for new clues and new cards to unravel the story. There are a lot of leveling up of your heroes, there are a lot of choices for you to make, there's a lot of deduction, a lot of traps to avoid, different endings for the story, but among all there's a game experience that it's like no other. I think this combination and novelty of combining the scratch-off system and the legacy aspect of it with the story, the narrative and all the choices is very unique. Personally, I haven't seen it anywhere before, and I have to admit up front I really like it, and I'm looking forward to play even more about it and find out more about this beautiful world. Now, the game is going to come on Kickstarter. I'm going to put a link in the description of the video below so that you can find all the details and follow the campaign. There are a lot of things for them to uncover, more stories, more chapters. The core game will have 5 chapters, full length chapters, a prologue and a tutorial. The tutorial is going to last around 20 minutes. It took me around 20 minutes to play. The prologue takes around 60 minutes. This is more or less correct according to my playthrough. And the next chapters are twice the length of the prologue. So this is a very full experience, and the plus of the system is that you can stop at any given time, save the status of the game, put it in the box and then come back to it. Of course, it's a legacy game. That means that your choices have an permanent impact on the physical components of the game as legacy games work, but there is a plus. They're going to be offered many different recharge packs in the Kickstarter campaign. That means that you can either reset your game and pass it to the next player on a ready-to-play state, or play it again yourself so that you can explore different endings. So this is very unique and very useful. Lots of cool different ideas, lots of innovative mechanisms, especially the scratch-off system is really unique. It feels very important when you take the decision on which direction to scratch off on the Grid of Destiny, and then how to deduce which keywords are looking, which words, story words are looking for, so that you can go in one direction or the other based on the letters that they are revealed. There are a lot of cool things like traps, like boosts, like leveling your heroes. When you scratch off different words of power and you take letters out of these words and you can put them on different abilities, and once you fill in the word count of the ability, then you unlock it and you gain additional tiles for you to scratch. So it's a very beautiful and very unique system, and lots of interesting gameplay elements. So join me at the table. I'll show you how the game works. I'll be very thorough. I'm going to use timestamps in the description of this video so that you can go and jump directly to specific chapters according to your liking, and then we'll come back at the end of this video for a final wrap-up about my opinion and my experience so far from playing the game. Once Upon a Line is a cooperative, immersive and narrative game played as a campaign and divided into chapters. You embody the heroes of the story and through them try to thwart a tragedy. To do this, you will search for words hidden under a scratch-off grid called the Grid of Destiny. When a word is completely uncovered, you take the corresponding card. This card reveals the rest of the story and new words to be found under the scratch-off. Use deduction to find new words, try to avoid traps like anagrams, palindromes or bustophodons. Complete your quest before the line of strategy has exhausted your heroes and reach one of the 9 alternate endings of the story. Over the course of many chapters, you'll level up your heroes, uncover secrets and make choices leading you to several possible endings. You'll also encounter new heroes, increasing your roster of potential characters to play. The Butterfly's Breath. On Earth, in the not-so-distant future, a pandemic has decimated almost all humans, and insects have become giants and now are prevalent. Since the dawn of time, you, the Zephyrimes, have watched over the great balance and secret. Now, as tragedy threatens to plunge the world into chaos, you will embody brave heroes and attempt to guide them through the challenges to come. Once Upon a Line is a Peter and Franca's game designed by William Aubert and Don Thuvenot, and these are the creators of the game, and they will be publishing the game in French. Lucky Duck Games are the English partners for Once Upon a Line, and they will be supporting the Kickstarter and publishing the game in English. The game uses a grid of destiny scratch-off system. That means every action players take have a permanent impact on the physical components of the game. As such, decision making is important, and doing your best to immerse yourself in the story and solve the puzzle is key to success. As part of the Kickstarter campaign, recharge packs will be made available for players who will like to reset their game, play again and explore alternative paths or endings, or simply to pass their game on a ready-to-play state. And the base game pledge will provide various options. I'm going to put the link in the description of the video so that you can follow the campaign once it launches, so you can find more information. But keep in mind that what you see here in front of you is a prototype material. Still, it's at the early stage of development, and these are not representative of the final game. And of course, the components are partial components because they only cover 2 playable chapters. The tutorial that can be played in about 20 minutes and a prologue chapter that can be played in about an hour. The final game will have a further full feature length of 5 chapters that will be twice the size of the prologue, and it will be much more deep and much more full of experience to be unraveled. Examples of how the full story grid destiny for the feature length chapters would be included and shown here for your reference. In the game, you have the utopian points, which represent your victory as Zephyrine, and they mean that you are on the correct path to save the world by gaining those symbols. And you also have these dystopian points, which represent your failures. Each time you take the easy way out, and each dystopian point will diminish your possible numbers of utopian points. So you need more of that and less of that. So let's familiarize ourselves with the components and the contents of the game. We have 6 grids of destiny. These are the grids that you see here. They are all numbered, so you play them in sequence. They are fully scratchable. That means that you can use the scratcher, as I'm going to demonstrate, so that you can scratch areas of the grid so that you can uncover words and progress the story. And just to show you how these look like, we have the fly on the wall and the background. This is number 3. We have number 4, which is the wing and a prayer, which has this front. You have walking on eggshells, which is this one, and these are all part of the core. You also have the bee in your bonnet, which is number 2, and with the respective story described. And you also have the opening a can of worms and the story that goes with it. Keep in mind that the first one that you're going to be playing is the prologue, which is a tangled web. Prologue, it's smaller, but you also have a tutorial so that you can familiarize yourself with the concepts of the game. So these are included in the game. We have 3 hero boards. These boards have different compartments so that they can keep in place the action tiles of the players. I'm going to cover them in a sec, but these are recessed, as you can see, and they have compartments for the 4 possible actions that the players can take. Here you can place all these zone tiles. These indicate the color of the zone that the hero is actively in, and in order to switch a color you need to spend 1 box in the line of tragedy, so you lose time, as you see. And again, here on the top part you can put your action tiles. Everybody starts with the same action tiles, one of 1 square, one of 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 and a 5er, and you can get more during the course of the game. But they also have a spot here where you can place your heroes. So speaking of heroes, when you get a hero, you place them like that, standing in front of your hero board. So this is one possible view. Again, you have a save box which you use to save the game. By the way, one of the cool features of the game is that you don't have to wait at the end of a chapter or session to play it. You can save it at any given time, and it's very easy. You have 92 action tiles in total, because this game plays from 1 all the way up to 5 players. In any case, we have various action tiles. You have the also special action tiles, which are traits. You unlock them by finding words of power and gaining access to the really important skills of your heroes. And each hero has their potential skills with their matching tiles that they can uncover by scratching off the words from things that they discovered during level up. And this is a part that we're going to cover as well. And we also have the scratcher, which is a really simple but very precise tool in order to scratch the scratch off area by pulling it like that. Okay, I don't want to scratch my my hand, but you get the idea. And there are several zone tiles which are color coded, and they go into this section to indicate that, for example, this hero is in the blue zone at the moment. There are 6 lock tiles. Lock tiles are used to block spaces, so that means that you have less spaces to use your action tiles. By the way, typically when you have filled your action slots, then you need to spend 1 box from your line of tragedy. That means you progress, it's like a timer, and in order to reset them and get them back available. We're going to cover that. There is, of course, the challenge gateway and score sheet, where you have the score and the notes, the back, and this has also challenges that can be scratchable, and the story is going to direct you when to pick them up and what to do with them. And the last thing that I want to show you, without making any spoiler, just briefly, I have this is the prologue, the cards that go with the prologue. They all have a specific way to read them, and you can find lots of different story and things to uncover, more heroes to get on board, and progression of the story and keywords, etc. Okay, so these are for the Tangle Web chapter, and these are for the tutorial, which I'm going to be using to demonstrate to you. Okay, and you can have also challenges with scratchable content as well. Okay, so there is, of course, one more box, which is a card holder. This holds this plate here, so that when you insert it on the box, then you can have the story cards vertically displaying, and you use them to put them in place so that they hold the story cards as such. And there you have it. These are all the components of the game, with one more pencil included and the rule book. Game setup. As a warning, first be aware that you should never spoil the story by looking at the cards before their time. You'll ruin the magic of the narration. So keep in mind that it's better not to take a look at the cards and just wait for you to uncover them at the correct timing. So the game setup is very simple. The first step is the grid of destiny. You place the grid of destiny before you, either tutorial or prologue, with the introduction facing up. So for example, if I'm using the tutorial, I'm going to take this and place it in front of me with the introduction facing up, as such. Or if I'm playing the first prologue, I'm going to take this grid of destiny and place it with the introduction facing up. Again, the prologue and the tutorial are the first ones, but as you move further down the story, you're going to be moving to larger grids of destiny, so we're going to have a larger prologue introduction as well. In any case, we start here with the Tangle Web. So what we do is we take the grid of destiny, we flip it, and we place it in front of us so that we can read it. The second step is we take the card holder and we place it inside the box at the bottom of the box so that it can facilitate the story cards in the correct orientation. Speaking of story cards, let's say again we're playing the Tangle Web. We take the deck of story cards that correspond to your chosen grid of destiny and place them in the card holder in front of us. So I'm going to take those cards that belong to this specific grid of destiny and I'm going to place them in the card holder so that they can fit nicely here. Then the hero boards. We take the number of hero boards needed for our grid of destiny and place them in front of us. In this case, we have our first hero, which is Iria, a barely 25-year-old. The skillful Iria loves open spaces and adventures. She is gifted sworn keeper among the Apiloptera and has earned a reputation of being as adroit as her proteges. For 2 years now, she has been secretly hoping that the handsome Severin will make the first move. So we place it in the slot on the hero board, and then we do the same. We take, of course, their hero cards and talents. Your heroes are pre-made and pre-selected for us, as you can see. But in the future, you're going to have the possibility to use different heroes. In each deck of cards, you will find the corresponding hero cards and talents. You place them, the hero in front with the portrait and their talent card, which is this one, for Iria, and you know it's for Iria because it says Iria on the top, just behind the hero board. The same goes for any heroes that come in there. We have Severin. At the prime of his 25th spring, Severin is a glorious member of the Scar tribe, respected by all in his guild. The arduous task of collecting cricket husks has rendered him resistant over the years. He is of a careful nature and prefers to dedicate himself to his work rather than pursue a relationship with Iria, a childhood friend. Okay, so here's his background. Okay, in the player board, and of course he also has his respective talent card with the talents that they can be unlocked for him later on. And this goes again behind the hero boards. We have the standard tiles. We place a set of standard tiles 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1, as you can see here. And I'm talking about the squares that make up the tile, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, the same for each hero. And they go into the reserve, the highest receptacle of each hero grid, which is the top part. In subsequent chapters, you may choose from several heroes, write their name, hero card number, and talent card number in their empty boxes when you have more options. We put the zone tiles. The zone tiles, as you can see, they go into this spot so that they separate the lower part from the upper part. We place a blue zone tile in each of the hero boards for starting. In the future, they may move to different zones, and we're going to indicate that they're on different zone by exchanging this tile with a different color zone tile. That means that Iria, in this case, she's in a green zone, while Severin is on a blue zone. But for setup, we start our heroes from the blue zone, respectively. Both of them, that is. Okay. And we need to have at hand other zone tiles like this, lock tiles like this, locker tiles, the scratcher, of course, which is going to be used frequently, and in addition other tiles like this, which of course these action tiles are going to be unlocked from the traits of the player, and they have different function depending on the hero that you are leveling up. We also need the challenge gateway. We need to have it handy next to us, so keep it handy next to you so that you can use it when needed, and you are ready to start the game. A very quick overview of the game sequence goes as such. We use hero action tiles from the ones available, and once we use them, we count We use them in a specific way. We count how many squares they can be used for, etc., according to the rules which we're going to explain later. Then we scratch the shape of the tile on the grid itself. So let's say this is a 3 pieces tile. I'm going to scratch it, scratch 3 pieces on the grid. Again, I'm following specific rules which I'm going to explain later on, but just showing you the quick overview now. Then I take the card that I reveal. Let's say I reveal the word barn. That means I'm going to find from the story the respective card which has the 3 first letters corresponding to the letter that the word I revealed. Let's say bar was here, and then I'm going to flip it and read it, this card will give me from the completed word will give me more information, more narrative, and I'll need to read and discover other words to find out on the grid following through. So unraveling the story and unraveling the narrative. So this is how the quick overview goes. The grid of destiny. On the face of the board you'll find the grid covered in scratch of ink. Letters and symbols are hidden underneath this ink. So underneath this area there are letters and symbols for us to discover them. The anatomy of a grid of destiny goes as such. You have the title of the chapter. Here is a prologue, a tangled web. You have the line of tragedy over here, leading to a red square. You always start scratching from left to right, and you want to complete your quest before reaching the end, but we're going to explain this. Every grid of destiny has on the top a line of tragedy, as you see, respectively. And then you have the grid of destiny, which is the grid over here, which has coordinates, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 10 for this one, and A, B, C all the way to Z for this one. So you can have specific coordinates because, for example, maybe you need to go and discover some things in specific coordinates at some point. On the back of the board, the back of the grid that is, typically you will find the introduction to the chapter, which is this area here, which we're going to read. The main objective in the black banner here. You also have the instructions, typically on the bottom over here. And then you have the chapter notes, which we're going to explain later. So, going back to our grid of destiny. In order to move forward in the game, you must scratch off squares on the grid of destiny. In doing so, you will reveal different words woven together. Each uncovered word allows you to access the corresponding part of the story card and follow the part of the story. On the grid of destiny, a full word will be framed by a bar or a bracket. Let me show you. Every full word will be framed by either a bar on the left of the first letter of the word and the right, or a bracket. So for example, you have cottage here, and you see the first letter has a bar on the left and the last letter of the cottage has a bar on the right of the letter. So between these two bars you have a full word, or gate, for example. This is framed with a bar and a bracket at the end, comparing two bars. Words can be written from right to left, from left to right, from up to down, from down to up, but never diagonal. So you can find the word word written like that, or written the other way around, word. You can see it vertically, word going downward, or word going upwards. Words can have spaces or hyphens, so one way with a hyphen, or an old key with a space. If a word is found without bars or braces or brackets at the beginning and at the end, then the whole word has yet to be uncovered, or it's not a real word used in the game. So for example, if you don't have a bar or a bracket at the beginning and at the end, and you have discovered the word, then it's not maybe fully discovered yet, or it's not relevant to the game. All letters on the grid of destiny are part of a word, and two words may be written parallel to each other. This way they may cause their letters to align without necessarily creating a word, like Zeppelin and wagon here are parallel, but they don't create words when they align. There are three different types of words and symbols, groups, let's say, that you can find in the grid of destiny. First of all, you can find story words. On the grid of destiny, story words are always framed by bars. Every story word has a corresponding story card that you must take from the deck as soon as the word is uncovered and immediately read. For example, here you have cottage. You know that it's a story word because it starts with a bar and ends with a bar. That means that it's a story word, and that means that you'll find a matching story card in the deck of story cards. And the way to identify this is, of course, by checking the first three letters of the story card. That means that you'll find a story card stated as COT, corresponding to the cottage, and you're going to find a COT card. All story cards have three letters at the beginning, which match the three letters of the respective full uncovered word. You also find words of power. Words of power, in contradiction with the story words, they again are found on the grid of destiny, but the words of power are framed by a bar and a bracket. Words of power do not have matching cards, only story words have matching cards. For example, if you see something like that, the door, it starts with a bar, it ends with a bracket. There is no card matching DOO, because you know that because it's a word of power. And you use these letters in the word of power that you unraveled, so D, O, O, and R, to scratch off letters from your talent cards, which we're going to cover later, but just to give you a hint up front. So if I unravel this word of power, door, I have D, O, O, and R, 4 letters, and I can find them and scratch them off from the different talents I have. Once I fill in a talent, then I'm able to acquire this action tile and essentially level up, because I'm going to be able to be more effective with additional action tiles. Other symbols that you can find on the grid of destiny are symbols like that. You can find this square, which means it's empty. There is no word there, it has a dot in the middle of the square. You can find the square with the hand. You need to stop scratching immediately. Any remaining squares on the tiles are lost. You can find the square with the skull. You stop scratching immediately, and any remaining squares on the tiles used are not to be used. And as a penalty, you scratch off one box on the line of tragedy and apply its effect. So one of these, which you don't want to do. And this icon here, squares with this symbol, the lock, mean that you may not scratch off beyond them unless otherwise indicated. As mentioned, we have the line of tragedy, which always is at the top of the grid of destiny, as you can see in this example here. The line of tragedy illustrates your loss of control over the heroes in the game. The squares are to be scratched off one after the other, always from left to right, towards this direction, reaching potentially the end here. So if I need to scratch 3, I'm going to need to scratch first this one, apply its effect, and then this one and apply its effect. You scratch off one of these boxes, using the scratcher always. So scratching one of the boxes here. When the following occur, you return all of your action tiles to the reserve, essentially resetting your hero possibilities. So if I want to return all of my tiles, even the new ones acquired from talents uncovered, into the available reserve, then I need to scratch off one of the boxes from the line of tragedy. So I would go and scratch this one here, indicating the pass of time. I also scratch one of the boxes when I move a hero from one zone to another. For example, if I want to move Sirven here from the blue zone to the green zone, I'm going to show how this is done in practice, but I also need to scratch off one box from the line of tragedy. You also scratch one box from your line of tragedy when you uncover one respective icon like that on the challenge gateway over here. If you scratch in one of those boxes with a question mark and you reveal one of those, then you need to scratch off one box on your line of tragedy. And also when you uncover a skull symbol on the grid of destiny. Last but not least, a story card instructs you to scratch off one box, then you'll have to do. You must immediately apply the effects of the uncovered space on the line of tragedy. For example, if you see this box here, immediately trade the affected hero's largest standard tile for a standard tile which is 1 or 2 squares smaller. So for example, if you scratch this red -2, that means that you need to find your largest one, which is the 5er, and replace it with the smaller one, which is a one with 3 squares, which is bad. If you reveal this icon, one of your hero loses one action until the end of the chapter. You place a tile on the affected hero's board to lock one of the action compartments, essentially forcing that hero, if you block one of the compartments, to have less compartments available and making him or her in need to reset more frequently. And scratch off boxes from the line of tragedy, which again you don't want. In the special case where you close a compartment that already holds one or more action tiles, these stay in the locked compartment until you brought them back to your reserve through the reset action. If it is blank, there is no penalty, and if you have this icon, you take and read the card with a matching symbol immediately. For a tangled web scenario, this would be this card that you need to read immediately because it has this symbol. If no specific hero is indicated, affected from what you chose, then you choose whichever hero you want to take the penalty, if no one specifically by name is indicated to receive the penalty. Also, after scratching one of these symbols here, you apply the effect of the symbol as soon as it is uncovered. And from this moment on, you must add one dystopian point to the score for any action that results in scratching one additional box like that. The hero boards. Every hero board has a hero card to insert into the card holder located above the reserve. During the game, tiles are put into the compartments of the board. The reserve contains all available tiles. The reserve is this area over here, as you can see, and the compartments are those below. The action compartments represent the 4 actions of the hero. 1, 2, 3, 4. For every action taken, you move the tiles needed to use this action in the compartment used, in a free compartment. So for example, I take this one, place it here, and take the respective action. You also have the available action tiles. These are only in the reserve. These are the ones used, like this tile used here. These are free compartments when they don't have anything, or you can have a locked action compartment as a penalty so that you cannot move one action tile in a locked compartment. Last but not least, you have the zone tile, as I indicated before, which goes here and shows in which zone the current hero is. You don't need to have both or three or all three of or any of your heroes in the same zone. You can have one in one zone and one in the other, and you indicate that by having different zone tiles in the respective spot. Speaking of zones, on the grid Destiny there are several zones made up of several words of the same color and geographic location based on the narrative. This color is also used on the story cards, on the titles of the cards, and on the words written in capital letters. On zone tiles placed on the hero boards in order to show the location as well. So for example, you can find, once you unscratch one area of the grid of Destiny, that you can have some green words together, or some red ones, or some purple ones, etc. This indicates that these are specific geographical locations that they go together by color and narrative. And a hero is in a zone when they have the matching color zone tile in the respective spot. Something important to note is that a hero action tile can only be used to scratch off from a completed word of the same color as the hero's zone tile. While playing a hero can move to a different zone, and once they have scratched off one of the boxes on the line of tragedy, they lose time, but then they can use this time to move essentially and travel to a different zone. Heroes may also be separated into different zones, and zones do not have an order, and you may go from any zone to another. So you don't have to go from the green to the red, then to the blue. You can go from whichever color zone to whichever other one, but you need to scratch off one box. And again, you always, this is a very golden rule, the most important rule, that you always scratch off from a completed line, word. The word needs to be complete, so you need to have, for example, cottage in order to use it to scratch off, and you also need to match the same color as the hero's zone tile. And again, I'm using the example from the rulebook to avoid any spoilers, but for example, here you have cottage and you have attic and gate, and they're all in the blue zone because they are in blue color, as you can see. The heroine has found the word secret passage, which is in green color and in green zone. She can use the action tile located in the blue zone to unlock the full word, since it's off attic, which is blue. A word about the action tiles. Every hero has several action tiles. The number of squares on an action tile corresponds to the number of squares that you can scratch off on the grid of destiny. The standard tiles are always yellow and straight. A hero begins every chapter with all of these tiles in the reserve. The 5er, the 4, the 3, the 2 and the 1. You also have the talent tiles, the blue ones. These are blue and are of various shapes. Each one can be immediately added to the corresponding hero board as soon as the talent has been completed. Alternatively, read the instructions written on the talent card, and then you can apply its effect, because each different talent tile has a different use, not only in terms of shape, but also in terms of ability. Here, for example, you see some examples of these tiles. There are some symbols on the tiles. For example, the tiles with this arrow that you see here. Let me move it up close so that you can see it a bit better. It's this one. And okay, let's focus. There it is. Okay, so this icon over here, the tiles with this arrow symbol can be combined with more tiles by connecting the arrows. The arrows show which direction the tiles face and which direction to begin scratching off. Combined tiles must be placed, of course, in a straight line, and they must all be placed together in the same action compartment. So for example, you can combine this one and that one, as you can see, so that you can make a larger one. But when you use them, you need to put them together in the same compartment, because I use them together and I put them in the same compartment. Some more symbols to show you on the different talent tiles, so let's bring those, for example, here. So this tile, when it has this icon here, like that, it cannot be combined with other tiles. The arrow shows the direction of the tile in comparison to the anchor word from where it starts. But it cannot be combined with other tiles. When you have this icon, which are the dotted lines, as you can see here, those dotted lines, you may stop scratching off after each square. So I can start 1, 2, stop, or go to 3, stop, stop, or stop. That's what the dotted line means. You can stop after each square. You also have this symbol, which is this type of star, as you can see here. This tile may be placed anywhere on the grid of destiny except beyond the icons with the lock, but cannot be combined with other tiles. You have this icon here with the forbidden entrance icon, this action tile, and this tile may only be used once per chapter. And then you have the round talent tiles, which are not connected with the actions of the Grid of Destiny, but instead have their own specific rules. They are still placed in the action compartment when they are used, and when you return back a hero action tiles, you do the same for these tiles. If hero does not have any free action compartments, they cannot use these tiles either. You can find for each of those tiles detailed description on each hero's talent card, because as you can see, they say what each of those do. For example, this one allows one to ignore the symbol, the scratch one box from the line of tragedy line effect of one of those symbols uncovered by this hero. So very, very useful. And each of those, which are quite a few as you can see, are linked with different talents from the different heroes. How to scratch off. You choose an anchor word. On the Grid of Destiny, a completed word in the same color as the hero's current zone tile. So if you're in a green zone, you need to select a completed green word, the anchor word that is. Then you place your action tiles in a row on the Grid of Destiny by straddling the first non-scratched off square closest to the anchor word, or by crossing over the anchor word or continuing a previous turn. You see here, by overlapping the first non-scratched square closest to the anchor word, which could be any of these ticked areas here, by touching the anchor word. So for example, here, touching the anchor word, either that way or that way, it is a fully completed anchor word which has the same color as the hero's current zone tile, okay? Or by crossing over the anchor word. Here the word is house and you have your action tile crossing over. In this case the letter O is lost, so you only scratch 1, 2, 3, of course, okay? And you can either start from the top of the square or at the bottom of the square, as you can see. And you may then scratch off by always respecting the following rules. The first rule is that you follow the shape of the tile placed in the action compartment. So you have to follow the specific tile that you choose, the shape. Okay. You scratch off one square at a time. So you start scratching 1, then 2, then 3, for example. Okay. One at a time, because you have to take under consideration what you reveal. And you always scratch off all possible squares unless met with an obstacle. So I have to scratch all possible squares in this case. So if I'm scratching off like that, I will need, continuing a previous turn for example, I will need to scratch off 1, 2, 3 unless I meet an obstacle like a lock or a skull, which are dictating me to stop. It is possible to place your action tiles over the edge of the Grid of Destiny and excess squares are lost. And again, to show you some prohibited positioning, so from an incomplete word, you cannot use this incomplete word, it has to be completed. Parallel to an anchor word, so if you have an anchor word here which is completed, you cannot start parallel unless something breaks this prohibition, without overlapping obstacles or continuing after an obstacle. See, for example, here there are obstacles, so you cannot overlap them, or you cannot continue after an obstacle with this positioning. The heroes. At the beginning of every chapter, you set up the heroes as indicated in the back of the Grid of Destiny. You cannot change your party once the chapter has begun, and unused heroes are placed in the game box with their talent card during the gameplay. The heroes do not belong to any player, everyone decides together what the heroes do. You may choose whichever hero you like regardless of order or who was the last one that played. New heroes may be unlocked during the course of the game. The anatomy is very simple. You have the guild symbol, so Iria belongs in this guild, Sylvain belongs in this guild. You have the hero's name next to the symbol of the guild. You have the introduction, which also depicts a lot of keywords as you can see. And you have the hero's number at the bottom. Respectively, you have for each hero the talent card. So this talent card corresponds to Iria, they have the matching name, and this one to Sylvain. You have the talents, so one talent here, a second talent here, and a third one here. You have instructions for using each talent, so the gifted one, which is here, allows one to scratch off this shape, so you get this action tile as well. Or, for example, the careful one, which is this one, allows one to interrupt while scratching off because it has the dotted lines, and so on. And you have the card number at the bottom as well. Using a hero. There is no player one or an order for actions in once upon a line. Players can use the same hero as many times as they wish. You choose a hero in the game, then you do one of the following actions. Using its action tiles, you place one or more, or if combining action tiles taken from the reserve into the hero's empty action compartments. The number of squares of the chosen tiles represent the number of squares that you can scratch off on your grid of destiny. Try placing the tiles on the grid of destiny before placing it in the action compartment so that you can validate what you're trying to do and be sure of your action before starting scratching off. Or you can replace its action tiles. You may put all of the action tiles in the action compartment back into the reserve. Before doing so, you need to scratch off one box, as always, from the line of tragedy, indicating the pass of time, and applying its effects. And you may replace them at any time, even if not all of the action compartments have been used, because you choose to do so, even if their tiles still in the reserve. And the third option that you can choose from is moving in a different zone. If you change a zone, first you scratch off one box from the line of tragedy again, and then you pick up the apply the effects, of course, always when you scratch off from the line of tragedy, and then you pick up the zone tile and place it on your player board. Solo or co-op. Whether you're playing alone or with others, the incarnate heroes are not assigned to anyone. They can be played at any time and by anyone. If you are playing in a group, work together to decide which actions to take. You may choose to assign the roles to players in order to make the game more fluid, but this is not required and anyone can use any player. An important part of the game is leveling up a hero. When you find a word of power on the grid of destiny, you may use letters to level up any hero in the game. I remind you that a word of power starts with a line and ends with a bracket. You take each letter from the word of power and check off the same letters found in any hero's talents. Each letter of word of power can only be used once. Any letters that are not placed are lost. You will most likely need several words of power to complete a talent. Once completed, take the corresponding tile and add it immediately to your reserve on the level up hero. A completed talent stays on the hero until the end of the saga, and at the beginning of each chapter add any talent tiles previously unlocked with the hero's reserve to begin the chapter. For example, if you have unlocked the word of power baskets, which starts with a line before B and ends with a bracket after S, that's why you know it's a word of power, then you can scratch off. For example, you can see letters askets on several of areas talents, so the letter B is not used in any tokens, in any talents, and therefore it's lost unless another hero in the game has a talent to complete a letter and use it, otherwise it's lost. And so from the ASKETS you can scratch off, for example, the E here, the S and the K here, the A here, and the T here. Okay, but the letter B is lost because no other hero has it. By collecting several words of power, then you will be able to complete one of the talents, and then you acquire the talent action tile and the ability with it. The story cards. The back of the story cards. The story card tells your hero's adventure. Each time a story word is uncovered on the grid of destiny, you take the corresponding card from the deck. The three first letters of the word are written on the front of the card. So you always check your uncovered letter, a word, into your grid of destiny, the full word, and then the first three letters are always on the matching card. Some cards may contain various numbers or symbols as well. The face of the cards. You begin by reading the entire card aloud and then you place it on the table so that it may be consulted later if needed. A story card is made up of a title, a color, which is the one that indicates the zone. So This one corresponds to the blue zone, for example, and the title is Cottage. A narrative text in which the story words are shown in all capital letters and zone colors. So here you see ancient in green and attic in blue. Possibly one or more instruction or objectives that you find here. A number that may be needed for certain instructions. Possibility of an icon like that warning you of the presence of nearby skulls here, and possibility of a bracket like that warning you in the presence of nearby words of power that share a letter with the title word. So all this is very useful information. The words written in color and capital letters appear throughout the story to give you hints on where to find them on the grid of destiny. Some words are underlined. This tells you that the word is located at a right angle to word of the title and that has a letter in common. For example, the text reads ladder that leads to attic, and attic is underlined. The word attic is underlined. It therefore crosses over the word cottage on either of the T's, as you can see here. And unless told otherwise, you do not discard the story card. It remains available to you throughout the chapter and you may consult it at any time. The instructions remain valid later in the game until a mission or restriction needs you to resolve it. Also, at the back of every story card, you can find different things like different hero cards and talent cards, which we explained before, but you can also find challenge cards. Challenge cards are different from story cards. When one is drawn, unless otherwise stated, they must immediately be resolved before continuing to the adventure. So this is an example of a challenge card. And how do you resolve a challenge? On this card you'll find a riddle and the answer to which is a single word. You take the challenge gateway card, this one, and find the number block corresponding to the current challenge card. It also has information here, as you can see, which breaks down to the response to the riddle, which is scratchable, and you can find it either here, for example, this one. You have hints, first hint or second hint that you can scratch off, the number of the challenge card that goes together with, and here are random penalties that you can scratch off. So how do you solve challenges? First, correct response. You say your response loud, you start scratching off squares from left to right, one after the other. If each letter matches your response, you continue scratching until the 8th square is reached. Then you scratch off the square with the number of the challenge card to know what card to take to continue your adventure. If you have an incorrect response, you say your response loud, you scratch off one or more squares from left to right. If a letter does not match your response, then you stop immediately and randomly scratch off one question mark from here. You will either find dystopian points or icons that dictate you to scratch off one box from your line of tragedy, or nothing. You apply the penalty and continue looking for a response. If you have no idea or you're clueless, then you can scratch off your first hint. This will be a synonym, an antonym, or a word associated with the response. So you scratch off as a penalty for using one hint, again, one question box from around, which again can be any of those penalties. If also you need to continue because the first hint wasn't enough, you can use a second hint, but again you need to scratch off one of those around here from your choice. If you're still unable to solve the riddle, scratch off all of the letters of the response and scratch off 2 additional question marks of your choice, and then scratch off the square with the number of the challenge card so that you know which one to pick. So here, for example, the response to the riddle was hammer, the first hint was nail, and this is a card that continues the story, Z098. And through scratching off square question boxes, this was one of the penalties applied to the player. Finally, some chapter notes. For example, for the heroes, the number of hero blocks indicate the number of playable characters in the chapter. Here you can see that a tangled web plays with two heroes specifically, and since this is the prologue, it says that we have to use those specifically ones. In some chapters there may be pre-made heroes which they must be played. Some heroes may have restrictions for certain chapters, and these are noted on the hero card. And for the inventory, this block here on the inventory is made up of items needed for quests and missions, and all items in the inventory as well as pellets here, for example, may be used by any hero on the team regardless of zone. Okay, let me show you up close again the back of a tangled web. Okay, you have the area for the heroes here, and you have your inventory over there. Same card is here. You have the player names that you write here, that you have here, the Zephyrims. You have the hero's name, Iria and Sirvin. You have the title of the story card. See here, for example, you can have a basket and the number of the story card, 038. And here you see the numbers. These numbers indicate the number of heroes and talent cards that they match your heroes when you start. Here is the number of pellets. And this all includes all the information on your inventory and respective boxes of the chapter. Throughout the chapter, a story card might suggest you're required to carry over an item, then you add along their title and the card number. So you need to add basket here, for example, if you're required to find it and use it. A story card may also require you to remove an item from your inventory. You also have the pellets. This is a symbol of the pellets. At the beginning of each chapter, carry over all the items used for the back of the previous grid of destiny, and throughout the chapter, a story card may require you to add or subtract a number of pellets. Here's a score sheet that you find at the back of this table, and you can find here information about how you score the prologue, the chapter 1, the chapter 2, the chapter 3, the chapter 4, the chapter 5, and various notes. And you can write all this down so that you can keep a record. You have the, let me move closer. You have these, the utopian points represent your, these are the utopian points here, which represent your victory as Zephyrim. You are on the right path to save the world, okay? You have this, which is the dystopian points, which represent your failures, and each time you take an easy way out, each dystopian point decreases your total number of utopian points that you're going to get, okay, and you need. It's sometimes better off to take a few dystopian points in order to triumph and bring about a utopia. You also have bonus points that you get here, or you have the total score of mission points for chapter, which you get here, or pre-made quest points that you have here, for example. And here is how you're progressing with the chapter. So you can be 1 out of 6, for example. At the end of each chapter, you must evaluate your game and fill out the score sheet here, respectively. You earn bonus points according to how well you did in the chapter. If you did not uncover any symbols like that on the line of tragedy, you get 1 more point. If you did not uncover any skulls on the grid of destiny, you gain 1 more point. You did not scratch any question boxes on the challenge gateway, you gain 1 more point. And you also have the mission points. Some missions completed during the chapter can earn you extra utopian points. When instructed to do so, you add the mission and the mission space here in the mission section. And when instructed to do so, you validate the mission by adding its value in utopian points here. At the end of the chapter, check all the missions completed during the chapter and calculate the total number of utopian points won. For dystopian points, a story card, a challenge, or the last square of the line of tragedy might give you dystopian points during the chapter. Add the indicated value in the box on the score sheet here. Last, at the end of the saga, add up all the total utopian points from each chapter to get your final score. End of chapter. The epilogue card marks the end of chapter. You add up your score on the score sheet. You bring your inventory to the next chapter on the grid of destiny as well as any pellets. You set aside all of your hero cards and the talent cards and you put them in the card holder. You reset all of your hero boards and you put them into the save box, and you put away all of the story cards and the remaining material in the game box. Save. You can stop playing at any time in the course of the game. First, you stack all of your story cards in the card holder using the bottom slip to separate discovered and undiscovered cards. You stack all of your hero cards, talent cards and hero boards as they are with the tiles inside the save box. And even if all three boards are not used in the current chapter, you use all of them so that you set the correct height to the save box and you can save them and preserve them carefully. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know on how to play Once Upon a Line, and I'm going to finish up here and come up with my final opinion on the game. So there you have it. This is Once Upon a Line. I'm a sucker for new things and novelties in the genre and the hobby in general, because I have a huge collection and I've played so many different games, and I can see that some of the basic elements, mechanics or ideas are used and used again in games, and this is okay, this is not bad. But I'm always a sucker for and looking for new things that really bring something that I haven't seen before on a board game, on the table, on a gaming experience. And this game really has it. It's not just the physical scratching of the grid of destiny, which is very unique. It's a combination of the system with the choices, because you have to be very thorough and very skeptical on which area to scratch, which direction to take on the grid of destiny. Try to avoid traps, try to look for clues, try to make the best guesses and deduce, and sometimes you have enough clues from the crossing over words that you can really look carefully and find probably that the keyword that you're looking for according to the story card is in this direction or that direction. The game has a very interesting mechanic because actually you have each hero has 4 actions, and you don't play a specific hero, you can continue playing the same hero and every player is controlling all the heroes, so this is very flexible and open. But you take action tiles which have different lengths of area, squares, and you use them as you've seen on the grid of destiny so that you can scratch off different lines and try hopefully to uncover the full word that you're looking from your story card so that you can pick up the new story card and then progress the story. But what is really important is the leveling up. It really is a nice feeling when you try to unlock some of the traits of the heroes, which give them very, very unique and special abilities. They give them special tiles with different footprint, with added rules that they give them options and directions to follow and things to do according to what they have unlocked. And on top of that, the last thing that really holds this triplexing, that holds this game system very, very well together, I think is the story. The story is really nice, and the way it unfolds, it's very unique, because you don't just visit an area and then, since you visited an area with your character or your miniature or whatever, you unlock and you go in a book of endings or stories, and then you read and then you follow the next paragraph or whatever. You have story cards, but in order to be able to access them, you need to unlock the keywords. So the keywords are in the previous story card, and this unravels the story, and then you take directions, and then your choices can give you a push towards one direction or another, and you can have different endings. And also the scoring system is really nice, because by doing so you leave a footprint on the grid of destiny, and this footprint is going to give you points that you want to gather, because the points will have an effect on the game. Of course, it's a very, very unique experience, and I really can't highlight this enough. It is a legacy experience, so those of you who are skeptical about the legacy games, I think the plus on this system is really that you can really recharge it, so you can take just additional recharge packs and then have the ability either to pass it by or sell the game afterwards, or even more before doing so, explore new endings and explore new stories. And the chapters, as they progress, they become bigger and more lengthy and more interesting and more involved. So at least the prototype was already very, very, very interesting, because we played the tutorial and the prologue, and it was really nice. So I'm really looking forward to see what they have done with the rest of the 5 chapters in the core box, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to have also expansions and more story and more options to be unlocked during the Kickstarter campaign. So there you have it. This is Once Upon a Line, a very, very very unique game, very interesting, very fun, immersive. If you like co-op games, it's especially really nice for solo as well. If you also are a solo player, because you can progress and you can play all the characters and progress the story. It has a very, very unique feel. It has tension, I would say. It's tense because you really need to be careful when you scratch off an area of the grid, because you're making a very, very permanent change on the grid, and this will have effect and consequences, let's say. But on the same time, you can use your logic, you can use your deduction, you can use the keywords, you can use all the clues that are there so that you can follow, unlock and progress the story and discover the story in the world of Once Upon a Line. Very, very unique, a game like no other, really, and I'm really, really enjoying it so far, and I can't wait to play more of it. So there you have it, this is Once Upon a Line.